So, topic for today. What is masculinity?
What makes a man a man?
Mm. Hey everyone, it has been some time. I am Sharif Iman, and this is,
Tiana
and we
Cage.
are on Love Speak Revolution, and we're so happy to be here.
It is beautiful. It's sunshiny in Oregon. We're so excited that finally spring is here.
Yes.
It feels like it's here. It's
Yes.
beautiful outside. Out the window, there's just like sun everywhere.
Yeah, and it's warm. It's warm out.
It is.
It's like just t-shirts needed. No misty, cold thing. So, topic for today. What is masculinity?
What makes a man a man?
What makes a man a man? I've had a lot of time to think about this. It's been very challenging. There are so many different facets, I believe. There is the world that describes us as men. There's religion that describes us as men. I think my experience as a man has been distorted and convoluted throughout the span of my life. I think at one point in my life, trying to fit the stereotypes that were placed upon me. And there was a lot of pressure as a man, I feel like I am tied into money. That's what makes me a man, or my performance. Everybody's looking at me, and what's my performance? How much money do I have? Materialistic wise, what do I have? What kind of job do I have? Like this whole performance thing as a man. And then as a man of color, I have to work triply hard to prove that I am, a good man. And then on top of man's religion, that whole systematic, the way that I am perceived as a man, and how I'm supposed to be. And so for me, that all those three different levels for me absolutely crushed me. And now I'm on a different view. And when we look at the world, we definitely see that there's tons of pressure to be a man.
Whatever that means. Yeah, I think for me, like in just the kind of, I know it's Women's History Month, so some may be thinking like, why are you talking about what it means to be a man? But one thing I learned, I used to be a Peace Corps volunteer, and when I was in the Peace Corps, like a lot of the stuff that we did centered around like empowering women, because we were in these contexts where like it was just very obvious that one way to uplift the whole community would be to uplift the women who weren't being given like opportunities to support their families with like fair rates of pay. There were just a lot of hi. There were just a lot of things in place in this environment that I was in a developing country, where you could see where women had a lot of power and potential, but they weren't able to like act on it because they were in environments that just didn't allow them to do that. And so we were like working. One thing I realized was like, this is never gonna work without also talking to the men. And so one of my favorite things to do would be to like go hang out with the men and talk. And so I think for me, like this whole idea of like, so I'm just saying like it's Women's History Month. And I think part of really understanding like what does it mean to like respect and love women, we have to also talk about men. And that's, I think, part of, for me, why I felt like this was a good topic too. We both decided on it, but why I thought that was really relevant. And we were just talking on Sunday when we came to the agreement we would talk about this topic, about a sermon that I had listened to at a church that I visited online. And it was actually talking about Jesus and toxic masculinity. So we thought we'd talk about like healthy masculinity. And I just thought it was so interesting because like what makes a man, I feel like Jesus would be a really good example of what it means to be like a healthy human in general, but also like what it meant to be like a healthy man in his environment. And a lot of what I see in that story is him going against like all these cultural norms in a whole lot of different ways, right? And some of that was how he related to women and like who he chose to acknowledge and who he chose to actually like give space. Um, some of the stuff that he would say to his disciples, like who he chose to talk to. But and then also like a lot of what he did, what he was doing to live out his calling, to be who God had called him to be, like what God had asked, basically like the plan, right, was very much like not what would be considered successful in his day. So when I was thinking about like what makes a man, as a woman, I must I admit that there's some limitations. I feel like I'm coming into this
Some
space in a different way than if
there's
I were a
some
man.
limitations.
Yeah, than if I were a
Mm.
man. So I'm not trying to like own that I know or whatever. So I acknowledge that. I also think that in observing, thinking through this story, like of Jesus, and they were even talking about like how Jesus came in on a donkey and like all these things that Jesus did that um, just would not have been acknowledged as like this is someone who's powerful. This is someone like we want to get behind for a lot of people because he was just very countercultural, but he was true to himself and true to like what really mattered. And so when I think about like what makes a man, that is kind of those are the kinds of things that come to mind first off for me.
Well, they were looking for a king with a sword that would deliver them from Roman rule. So, and that's not what he came to do. But I agree because the more the more that I try to push against, not push against, um, bench, the more I tried to bench the world and man's religion and everybody's expectations on who I was supposed to be, the more that it crushed me. But the more that I gave in and surrendered myself, and the more that God would show me who I was as a man, does turn this world upside down on its. But the more that I understood, the more that I could appreciate a woman. Tiana and I are very close, and she knows how I respect her and how I get, just she knows who I am. And me being able to be that is because um, God is showing me truth, and the man that He is showing me is exactly what you're talking about. Like Jesus, looking at what Jesus did, who Jesus
Mm-hmm.
was, how He interacted, how He was so selfless, how He never like wavered from His purpose, but He was so loving and caring and patient.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's it right there. And I think that's just the thing in terms of seeing Jesus who He was. He was the staple for, I believe, male and female, because I think that when he we had made a you had made a powerful comment that has been really just sitting with me. We were having a discussion about gender, and you challenged me um, on gender, and that's a totally different topic that we'll come back into. Um, but I think it's gender is a gift on this planet, but I think it's just in terms of the Trinity, it's like infinite. Like we can't truly understand. But for the sake of relationship, God created gender
Mm-hmm.
so that we could have relationship and love, not to be dominant and be different, so to speak, but it's like more relational. So, as a man, I can tell you the more that I mirror Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
the more that I am to myself true, and then the more that I know how to treat people, respect
Mm-hmm.
people, but I get revelation on women um, through my actions of surrender to Christ.
Uh-huh.
He gives me revelation, and I see on on my journey for that. So I think that what makes a man, I can tell you right now, is not the world. The world doesn't make a man. Religious church or man's religion does not make a man. What makes a man is God, and who God designs it is Jesus. If we want to see the description of how we're supposed to be as men, um, we follow Jesus. Jesus was relating to the times in
Mm-hmm.
terms of where we are now is a totally different time. Totally, we have so many distractions. We have so much technology. Things are just not the same. But we take the principles of Christ as men, and that's how, like, his unwavering for the kingdom, his love, his unconditionalism, his pushback against man's religion, like against the Pharisees. He still loved the Pharisees, but still there was like this pushback because there wasn't truth in it. They were manipulating it. They were stuck in the Old Testament. They couldn't see the newness of the kingdom. They couldn't see that he came to to complete. They couldn't see the completion of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what happens as men. We don't see the completion of it. We're too busy trying to be the man's world, money, cars, trophy, to be something like we're peacocking. So yeah, I'm a man, look at me, um, or the religious type of peacocking, where it's just like, using the Bible in that aspect. But when we can honestly allow God, and
Mm-hmm.
this is for me speaking personally for myself, when we can honestly like allow God to show us that requires us being broken down, because God has been breaking me down, like breaking me down
Uh-huh.
to my core to say, hey, all this stuff we need to weed through, all the tears, right? The tears, we got to weed through all that
Mm-hmm.
so you can see how I've designed you and how I describe you and how I have created you. And once you see that, then I can begin to operate in this world, specifically on my view of his daughters. So I don't know how to actually treat this woman if he doesn't show me, and if I don't dig into the word, and I don't dig into like you were saying, like Jesus, right? Because I didn't create her.
I
Like
could give you a list.
so, but I think it goes both ways,
List of
but for
things.
men and women, I think
Yeah.
it's the same principles that apply. But I think it is that we all need to challenge each other as and men and women, and refocus each other back to Christ, so that we can
Mm-hmm.
in turn walk as Christ. And when we're walking as Christ, we treat each other how we should treat each other. It's not easy, but
Yeah.
it's my take. For me, I had to find out who I am
Mm-hmm. So
as a man in Christ.
self-aware is that would
Self-awareness,
be one piece
but
of it.
I don't know. Self-awareness sounds like, oh, I need to go figure it out
Yeah.
myself, and that's not what I'm saying. Because no,
Mm-hmm.
you don't need to figure it out on your own. Um, I couldn't know how to function in this world or treat anything or anyone properly until I really went after my brokenness and faced my brokenness and got some healing to where I could remain open to some truths about myself,
Mm-hmm.
and then some truths, because when I healed about the truths about myself, I could refocus the truths that I thought that were in the world. And then just because for me, I was a very prideful person, and I demanded respect from everybody, because I think that's what it when as a man of color in this country, you're not going to disrespect me, like, because I went through so much disrespect, especially being light skinned. So it was like I went through so much disrespect. So I was all like, no, you will respect me. I was a cool dude, but I was like, God had to break that in me. God was just like, no. So now that's just one fraction of a lot of things that I had to work through. But I had to humble myself, and in humbling myself, it was hard and it hurt,
Mm-hmm.
because then it was like I felt like I was giving into the world, and I was copping out, and I was like a wuss to the world and a wuss to man's religion, and they were just kind of like, instead of being able to stand up and fight for myself, it's like, no, Jesus went to the cross, but I couldn't really focus and understand until I broke down the walls and that pride and that
Mm-hmm.
anger, and the view of the world and the view of just everything. I mean, because it's real hard. It's everywhere we look. It's in our music. They tell us how to be men, right?
Mm-hmm.
They basically defile women. and how like women are just more just basically sex objects. And I did something yesterday, and for some reason I was just kind of listening to some music,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted to listen to Ludacris, just because he is like he flows. His flow was just amazing, but I couldn't stomach it because it was just like
The words.
the
You were
words and
listening to
how
the
he was
words.
describing women and how they were like responding to that, and even the female rappers. It was like, I'm gonna call you this, but and they were like, I don't know if they were trying to say it's not the negative connotation of this word, but I'm still powerful because I can use my body to get like the men are out getting money and the women just want money, but the women are powerful because they can use their bodies to get them. I was like, really? Is this what it's, I mean, and I
Yeah.
was like, dang, throw them bows. I was like, man, that's you. But now when you listen to those things, so it's in music, it's in movies, it's all over what we see about how they're telling us how to be men. Become a millionaire. You need to become a millionaire. You need to have all these Lamborghinis and all this money. And why? Why do we need to? Why do we need to do that? Like,
Mm-hmm.
why do I need to? Why does that make me? So there's just so many things, and church isn't behind. Church is not far from that. To teaching you how to so the best guys are the worship leaders, and the best guys are this and that, and the theologians and did this, and they're still getting their hair dusted. They're still putting their Gucci on and all their clothes on and looking all fantastic and everything. No, that doesn't make a man. Jesus didn't have a home. God is showing me this world and man's religion and anything that's trying to define you, that is not who he created us to be as men. I think somebody said, as a man, it's not how you fall, it's how you get up. And that's who Jesus was. Because he was just all the stuff that happened to him, it's how he stood. It's how we get back up. It's doing to me, it's going against the world. And that's not easy. To me, it's going against it's turning
Mm-hmm.
everything on its head. And when everything is coming against you, calling you a fool, stand your ground. And I feel like if you're man enough to do that kind of thing, then
Mm-hmm.
you're man enough to know how to love and operate not as how the world says I treat a woman, or not as how man's Christianity, the
Mm-hmm.
neck, the man's the head, the woman's that's bullcrap. But letting God turn my world upside down on its head and showing me and guiding me how to be that man, how to love my wife or just people in general. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
the only way.
I think all of us have our healing journey, and you referenced this how you're healing too, Sharif. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that to me, part of what like returning to what it really means to be a man, when I'm looking at people, the men in my life who have been so just empowering for me, I realized that many of them had the courage to do what it took to face like the stuff that they had gone through in their past that may have been like causing them to have this false like understanding of who they were, or like this desire to be trying to please the people around them with these whack standards.
Mm-hmm.
Because yeah, like you said, I mean, in order to be able to like humble yourself and be like, okay, God, I'll do what you want. I think part of that, um, you can try to follow God, but if you haven't dealt with all these things in your past, like there's hurdles, there's boundaries, there's limitations to your ability to even be able to, I think, understand really fully what it means to love and to love well, to love yourself, to love other people, and even to really be able to love God, because I think a lot of the ghosts and a lot of the issues from their past,
Yeah.
when we don't deal with them, just everybody in general, but I think men too, including men, when we don't deal with those, like sometimes those color thin how we understand God, even how we relate to God, and some of the things we think are true about God that aren't, you know, like,
Mm-hmm.
or what God would want from us, like that God is like, no, that's not even true. So when I think about not just someone who's like trying to follow Jesus and put God at the center, but I think part of that is, like you're saying, really important. Also, making the space then for like saying, like, God, like, show me
Yeah.
all these things that may have happened to me in my past that have got me to where I am now, the things that I need to like weed through so that I can know what lies I have internalized about what it means to be a woman or what it means to be a man, so that I can get rid of those and like replace them with the truths
Yeah.
that you find in God.
And I totally agree with you. And I think that's the equation for both genders. Just that's it right there. For us to know how to um, lead and love each other well,
Mm-hmm.
I believe is this equation. We had a conversation, and the Holy Spirit showed me that right now everybody is trying to get their piece of definition and light in society. They want to be seen, they want to be heard. But this is a fallen society. But if we do that in Christ, we figure out whose we are. We figure out where, why we are. And in that, we won't need society to tell us who we are because we are not who society says we are. Whether you're a woman or you're a man, we are who God says we are.
Mm-hmm.
We are who God created us. And when we're focusing on that, all this other stuff is fades away. I don't mean that it's not hard, but God didn't say it wasn't going to be hard. He said it was trials and tribulations, but we could take courage because Jesus came to overcome. So I feel like masculinity is poorly distorted, like poorly distorted about muscles and sex appeal and money and or throwing all that away and being some guru. I mean, it's just like on both sides of the spectrum. God made me masculine, and what his definition of masculine doesn't negate vulnerability, doesn't negate sensitivity, doesn't negate beauty. It doesn't negate all of these things. But the world says, no, you can't cry, you can't be beautiful. What are you this? Because you think I'm all of these things. It's just like such. I think it was just like people in the times, men, quote unquote, that didn't want to feel, that didn't know how to feel, so they just pushed it all down. I'm like, I don't think I'm supposed to feel this way. I don't think I'm supposed to do that. Are you kidding me? You're feeling it. Yes, you are. So we have to get back to who designed us to understand what that is and who split us into gender for the sake of relationship. Because God is the only one that truly understands woman and man because he created it. So once we get back to that, for that equation, so that's good. I totally agree with that equation that you're talking about. Yeah.
This picture that has been just really meaningful to me is like when you think like, who are you as a man, who are you as a woman? You are the person behind the thoughts, right? Like you're not the thoughts. And I think that so there's a lot to that, like understanding that you get to choose. Like
Yeah.
there's because I think sometimes there's like that so much pressure, like this is what I'm supposed to be. What I'm hearing from all of these just the noise, I think men I've watched, like, I have nephews, and just even watching all of these just things just coming at them. And I think for me it's been comforting to think about if we really step back and remember that we are not the thoughts, we are not all of these things, they're in our heads. We don't have to identify with them. We get to choose to step behind the thoughts and to acknowledge what we know to be truth from God and rest in that space behind the thoughts.
Yeah.
And respond and react and love and respect and hope and dream from that place that's like behind the thoughts.
Yeah. But also, you got to understand that your thoughts change when when God is renewing you, and that's the powerful thing. You're behind the thoughts, and your thoughts begin to change, and it is a war.
Yeah.
It is a war because the flesh wants to stay the same. The flesh doesn't want to change because I have to battle through that every day. I have to, sometimes I get so frustrated that I have to take that pride box of, you will respect me, and just set it to the side, put it to the altar, and just be like, I forgive you, and God, please help me to navigate through this because I have no clue how to navigate through
Yeah.
this.
I don't know if anyone's on TikTok, but there's this girl, I don't even remember her name. She makes these videos, and it's like her in her room, but and then it's like she's three different people, right? She's her, she's an angel, and she's God. And it's funny because she'll be like doing these things she knows she's not supposed to be doing, or like thinking these thoughts that are just off, and then you'll see it like switch around, and it's God, and God's like, and she's like, okay. So I feel like there is that constant struggle where you're just like, yes, oh, yes, oh, like where even once you are on the journey where you're like trying to reconnect with truth, like your thoughts do change, but sometimes like those old ones, they still kind of loop back around, and they're just like they're there, and so you have to make that choice, like to not give in. Mm-hmm.
Oh, the choice.
Oh, the choices.
We are celebrating women's. I think that women should be celebrated every day, all the time, not just 1 month. I have an issue. She's getting to know that I have an issue with these months. Like, why don't we do this through the whole time? But we are sad. We are glad that we do have this in celebration for who you are as queens and powerhouses of the mighty King.
Yes. And to piggyback off of that, because Misty says, like, God is restoring and renewing all of us. So this is a great month just to remind ourselves of the truth, so that now as we walk throughout the rest of the year,
yes.
Men and women, we can be reminded that, like, as we are being restored, like, the other people we're coming into contact with, they also are deserving of respect and love, and we're all on our journeys.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a continual fight, to fight for truth and to fight for love, regardless of if you're a man or a woman. I mean, all of us, like, the world needs all of us to be living fully into our purpose, and to be healing, and to be putting ourselves in the positions where we can serve each other, and where we can really be there for each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
We will definitely be back again. So be on the lookout on Sharif's page, on my page. We'll be advertising when we come back on Wednesdays at 5:30 Pacific time, 7:30 Central time. Love Speak Revolution. As always, my name is Tiana Cage.
And I'm Sharif Iman.
And don't forget that
love wins. And you're amazing. You're meant to be here. You're on purpose.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.